Well, hello. My name is Terry Flotte. I'm president of ASGCT, and I'm going to be presenting to you on a rare disease access to gene therapy, an update on the role of ASGCT. Before I do that, on this occasion, I wanted to remind everyone about our 2026 annual meeting in Boston, with also a virtual option on May 11th through the 15th. I particularly want to call out the Presidential Symposium on May 13th at 11, I'm sorry, at 1:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, this is a symposium that I will be hosting, and in what I think will be a first for ASGCT, we're going to have a presentation from a rare disease parent, Terry Perovalakis, who's also the founder of Alpita Therapeutics. And then we'll hear on gene therapy access for rare disease from Dr. Claire Booth, who's the leader of gene therapy effort at Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London. And they are moving forward with rare disease gene therapy without a commercial sponsor. So, and I will also remind you that patient advocates can attend the annual meeting for free. And if you look at that at our website, under the registration, you can find that option. All right. I'm going to talk about four steps in my talk today. Um, all of them are aimed at maintaining access for what we're calling commercially pre-viable gene therapies. So first of all, I'll describe the problem. Many of you in this seminar would know, but we've hit a period of time now after a sharp rise in the initiation of commercial interests in gene therapy, with a period where a number of cell and gene therapies are being discontinued, either while they're already in the clinical stage, or in some cases where gene therapies that have already been licensed in Europe, for instance, for certain forms of severe combined immune deficiency, are actually being withdrawn from the market. And it's not because they're not working. It's not because of a lack of clinical efficacy. It's because of a failure of the market to sustain these important life-saving therapies. And these are just four publications about that. Last year, a group from UMass Chan enumerated about 50 such rare disease programs that have been dropped, as based on at that current time a scan of the biotech trade literature. There have been many more since then, and these have really hit a range of different disease types, and it is definitely a pervasive trend across the field. Now, ASGCT has, from a basic strategic point of view, maintained a focus on access. In fact, our most recent strategic plan is depicted here, and I think you can see at the center of all the things we're doing is the concept of universal access to cell and gene therapy. You know, over the decades now, we've been a forum to develop these therapies and to test them, and it is essential that we get them to the patients to whom they are intended. So, what we've done in the last few years, 2, 3 years, has been to establish a task force on access. And again, just to restate the problem a little more explicitly, uh, there are about 7,000 rare diseases that are treatable with cell and gene therapy. But in order to be commercially viable, they have to meet certain characteristics that are relative to the healthcare market. And those whose viability is limited because of the small size of the patient population, we have called commercially pre-viable therapies. We hope they eventually become viable in the open marketplace, but for now, they need to be sustained in another way. Uh, Academic centers sometimes are managing small early stage trials, but they need the cost of manufacturing to be decreased and the duration of the regulatory process to be hastened. So, what we've done, again, reinforcing our strategic plan that prioritizes access, was to put together this task force with many different stakeholders, academic institutions, industry, FDA, and others, NIH and other funders. And we, on a series of calls, talked about different aspects that could help this along. Platform approvals might shorten regulatory pathways. Centralized manufacturing facilities or network facilities might be able to decrease the cost of manufacturing. And these might need to be done in different corporate models. So we went through this whole process outlined here between informal discussions with the executive committee, going on with discussions with the FDA, and then had our task force meetings by virtual means, culminating in an in-person 2-day workshop that was March 6th and 7th, a very important time for this society. And now there have been follow-on actions taken by the ASGCT board, which I'll be describing. So just a little more about the workshop. We called it Establishing and Maintaining Access to Gene and Cell Therapy for Rare and Ultra-Rare Diseases. There were 48 attendees, as I said, broad representation of different kinds of entities. We defined the problem, talked about the ways to lessen the barriers and reduce the financial barriers. And we were trying to think through there, really, and creatively look at what some places are doing and how we could facilitate paths forward for ASGCT in the field. And again, what kept coming up were these three general buckets of actions that could be solutions to the problem of access to gene and cell therapy. That those would be reducing regulatory burdens through harmonization and again this platform concept, accelerated approvals, trying to innovate in manufacturing, which we think ultimately will drive down the price, and then looking at alternative financial models, which there are several different versions of. So at that meeting, we at toward the end enumerated what are the things that are already ongoing, and those are listed on the left column. And I think you know most of what those are, but certainly advocacy, education, and being a forum for global outreach and research. And then we talked about options for new activities. And again, we committed to continue convening and discussing to advocate for rare disease developers. Drive philanthropy was a new one that we'll talk about toward the end, and to advocate for benefits for ultra rare developers, leveraging ASGCT assets to advance clinical trials certainly was seen as being something that we should determine ways to do. And we talked about funding clinical trials, although we thought that may be beyond the scope of what we would do at this point. So we focused really on, among things that required some work to organize, creating benefits for ultra rare developers and leveraging our assets to advance clinical trials. So we felt we would be a great venue to bring cell and gene therapy developers together and create a consortium that could benefit from their collective strength and economies of scale. We felt like we could use our special role in this field as an impartial arbiter of all aspects of our field, and potentially create a marketplace or environment to help get the shelved programs into the hands of people who could continue to move them forward. And as I said before, talk about driving philanthropic models and innovating in the regulatory and manufacturing space. The first thing that we talked about with the board, or which the board had the most enthusiasm for coming out of this meeting, was developing a consortium of developers for cell and gene therapy in the rare space, open to all the different kinds of entities, um, based on those that met the definition of rare and ultra rare, but a commitment that in order to get the lower cost activities, mostly manufacturing, out of such a consortium, that would come along with a commitment to share data. And often the mechanism of drug master files allows the data to be formally cross-referenced by FDA. And then perhaps in a case where there wasn't capacity within developers in the network, negotiate with outside CDMOs and CROs for economies of scale. In each case, resulting in lower costs. And if the drug master files got to be sufficiently uh, substantive, then to use those to reduce regulatory burdens and move toward true platforms. So this is, again, a diagram of how that consortium would work, hitting all of the interests and I think accomplishing what we described on the right side. Now, a very innovative thing then has developed that the board now has endorsed us to do. We have engaged in a new relationship with Orphan Therapeutics Accelerator. Um, in that relationship, we are going to partner to create a third entity that we jointly own and manage, that will serve as a clearinghouse and a marketplace for deprioritized cell and gene therapies. So as a clearinghouse, we will be building a database of deprioritized therapies, screening them, helping potentially interested parties index through them with listings and profiles, and add to what is put in by doing a risk-based assessment of the programs. Then we would have the potential to match those programs in a sort of a marketplace where they would then be able to be partnered out with future interested commercial or non-commercial sponsors to transfer these programs. So to take in what's abandoned and to find it a good home, if you will. We would be able to administer confidential virtual data rooms. So when an investor comes in and they need to know all the details of such a potential product, they could go to one place. This is diagrammatically what it looks like, and I don't have time to go through the entire process, but the clearinghouse includes that assessment with aided by AI, which we think will enable a potential future investor to save a huge amount of time moving things forward. And then the marketplace, which will help us to get these things out to the world. So when we look at what ASGCT is doing, these are the specific actions, as I mentioned. The consortium is going to be led by ASGCT with staff internal to ASGCT. It is in the process of being organized by its members. The clearinghouse in the marketplace is going to be a joint venture, actually, a separate entity jointly owned by ASGCT and Orphan Therapeutics. And we really look forward to getting that operational. And just want to thank all of my colleagues who've contributed to this, and credit the board and the former board leadership and future board leadership for their commitment to this as well. Now, the final thing I'll say is that ASGCT took another historic action and established an adjacent affiliated charitable foundation in the board meeting in November. And what this will initially be doing is raising money to facilitate what I was talking about before, these access initiatives to cell and gene therapy. This will be done in a not-for-profit and set up to where ASGCT will be providing the staffing so that the donations don't have to cover administrative costs. It'll be kicked off with a gala. An annual gala will then follow, along with targeted fundraising. And in addition to the access initiatives that are more specific, it would also fund early career grants and investigators who are in some way connected to access for patients, along with perhaps in some cases directly funding patients for the wraparound costs that they may need to otherwise pay out of pocket to participate and get access. And then finally, awarding funding to nonprofits who choose to accelerate gene and cell therapy as partners.